All right, Dan, another podcast, man. We're finally able to connect on a day to record.
Yeah, all those days in the field, it's good to get back and have a rest day.
Yeah, for sure, man. We've both been going so hard. So it was really fun to catch up with you this week and hear about some of your adventures with Guy, that giant moose you killed, and then giant bull. Like you've been helping a bunch of buddies out along with your own bow hunting success.
Yeah, busiest year yet by far. So many days in the field. I don't even know how we're already November 1st today. And man, talk about epic adventures. Beyond the Grid's going to be so freaking fun in 2024 with these releases, like 5 elk hunts, just awesome adventures, and this giant Boone and Crockett Shiras moose hunt. That just the start. So we got a lot more coming, and I'm excited to finish this season off. And yeah, just a great conversation today about deer.
Yeah, we're getting into the November rut, so we definitely focused on deer. And I'm just coming off a couple hunts, and then you're getting ready for one. So just a really good back and forth. And then a lot of this stuff you can apply to any hunt. So talking about the evolution, and then talking about like moose hunt. You got to feel some of my pain from last year, where they're really tough to find those low densities. So it was fun to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, beating your head up against the wall 2 weeks into it, and you're starting to question everything that you do out there. You're like, "Man, no, I swear, I've got hunting experience under my belt. I should be able to figure this out." But
Yeah. Well, super fun. And I also like comparing whitetails and mule deer. And you do a lot of Western whitetails. And it sounds like fun. I've got to get more into that. But yeah, great conversation, man. I just want to thank our sponsor for today's show, Juniper Mountain Coffee. So I had these guys on the podcast last week, Dan, and it was awesome. You talk about salt of the earth, good human beings, hunters at heart. Like what a great company and great guys.
yeah, I wish I could have made it. I was out elk hunting with Guy, but yeah, they're just that we're all cut from the same cloth, and talk about just a great product and a family owned company, and we just meld so well, and their product is great. I mean, it's hard to beat a good quality cup of coffee on those cold mornings.
Oh man, I've been surviving off their coffee. I just came off one of my coldest hunts. Like I think my fingers and toes are still cold from that thing. But yeah, the only thing keeping me alive was Juniper Mountain Coffee. And it wasn't just the one cup in the morning. There was like anytime I'd get a break in the action, I was having a cup. But yeah, man, I love the quality of their coffee, and their roasts are so good. And they do have some instant in the works, but until then, I've been using the French press, which makes the best cup of coffee, anyways.
Yeah, well, my hunting buddy Doug, he actually got me one of those jet boil French presses, and yeah, talk about a game changer. That's the way to do it with that freshly ground coffee, and just French press it right in your jet boil cup, and it doesn't get any better. It really doesn't. And dadgum, I think even if they do have the instant stuff, I might just stick with the French press type, because you're not going to get any better than that in the field.
Yeah, I'm with you. Unless I'm backpacking, but even that French press doesn't weigh anything in ground coffee. So you're right. That is the best cup of coffee you can get. So yeah, thanks to those guys for their sponsorship on the podcast and friendship, and just really good guys, great company, and it's just coffee without compromise. And so we really appreciate those guys and what they do for us.
Yep, super happy to be partners with them too, and especially when it's a great product, and that's what we strive for here is, products that we believe in, that we partner with them, and it just doesn't get any better, and we always have proven results with those products.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, man. Yeah, over at Eastman's, been dropping some good episodes. I saw Ike's episode drop. So you do so much in front of the camera, but you also do a bunch behind the camera. And so you filmed Ike's hunt last year, and man, he got into some crazy rut in action, or you guys did.
Yeah. No, it's fun taking him hunting, and well, I shouldn't say that, taking him hunting, but calling for him when we're elk hunting. And the next release that we had with the Guy and Ike's mule deer hunt. But yeah, bow hunting elk was fun with Ike. We ended up hunting during rifle season as well, and he killed a great bull and just a great adventure. And yeah, it doesn't get any better when you're running the camera and the excitement. And once again, I enjoy this stuff just as much as if I were hunting for myself. So yeah, check out Beyond the Grid. Just one of the small things that we do here at Eastmans. Check out all our podcasts, the Eastmans Hunting Journals podcast, and of course, Eastmans Elevated, and the mule deer course. It's not too late. Mule deer season is not over yet. And we're still running our special with the Eastman's online mule deer course. And I think you have a code for us, Brian, don't you?
Yes, Brian MDC, and that'll get you a free mag view, which is the best digiscoping product I've ever used. It's so quick for my phone. I've been grabbing such good digiscoping, and really that product pays for the mule deer course. Like you get 10% off. You get the that mag view spotting scope adapter. It also will adapt to your binos as well. So it's really good for like capturing footage and capturing pictures during the hunt. So you get that free with the purchase. And us as hunters, we never stop learning. And so we talk a lot about my mule deer hunts today, being able to travel and hunt different places. This is all covered further in depth in that mule deer course. Absolutely everything Dan and I know about hunting mule deer. Guy Eastman also speaks on the rifle course and speaks to a lot of his experience mule deer hunting on it. So it's the best product that we could put together for hunting mule deer. So if you want to travel and get in on some of these adventure hunts and know where to go and how to break down the units and how to stalk and shoot, man, it's all there in that mule deer course.
Yep, it's great stuff. And don't forget to leave us a review. We appreciate your reviews with this podcast, Eastman's Elevate and Eastman's Hunting Journals podcast on iTunes. Anytime you can leave us a review, it helps us out, right, Brian? I mean, it's big.
Oh man, it's like the biggest help that you can give us with this podcast that we put out for free each and every week. But just leave us a review. It takes 2 seconds. You tap the 5 stars if you like us. 1 star, just send Dan an email directly. But yeah, no, those reviews really help us out. And then, I have a couple of reviews here. Like Brian and Dan do a great job of getting right to the heart of bow hunting. Tons of insight, tips, and tricks. Their mutual respect and friendship enriches each podcast as they riff off each other's conversations. Listening to each episode, you feel like you're accepting a seat at the campfire. These guys are an open book, sharing all they've learned over decades of Western hunting. So that was from Troy V03. Thanks, Troy, for the review. I really appreciate it. Man, like those mean the world to me. And so, I'll screenshot them and send them to Dan. But we're just those reviews like that. Like that's why we're doing this podcast, is to help guys out. So thanks for the review, Troy. Got another one here from Gadget642. I've been listening to Brian Barney for a while, and his podcast, as he joins Dan Pickar, is another avenue for me to get great information. So I'm better prepared for this hunting season. Thanks a bunch, gentlemen. So thanks from Gadget642. But yeah, those reviews, they really help us grow this podcast and be able to get sponsorship, which pays for Dan and I's time to be able to bring you guys this great content. So thanks you guys for those. And man, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great stuff. And that's what it's all about. You guys, we want you to feel like that you're right in on the conversation around that campfire and dropping some knowledge that we probably won't talk about anywhere else. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from this Eastman's Bowhunting Journals podcast is just the knowledge that we're going to talk about. It's definitely the value that you're getting out of this podcast is unmatched that you're going to find anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. 100%, Dan. Man, let's get into this episode. It's a good one, man. I really enjoy it, like I enjoy every episode, but it was fun to catch up with you, as it's been a while since we've done a podcast.
Heck yeah, buddy. Let's jump in.
Yo, we made it in for another podcast, man. It's been touch and go. Me and you've been busy.
Holy smokes, and it's already November.
God, just like that, right?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Sure is. Man, I saw you and Guy got a good bull the other day. So you've been doing filming some rifle hunts, huh?
Yeah, a lot of filming. Maybe a lot of people don't know that I film so much. It's, bow hunting is just a small part of my job here at the office. And bow hunting season is only so long, but I'm always out there, whether it's bow hunting or rifle hunting, just trying to produce the best content possible, the best adventures for you guys out there watching. So yeah, that's what I was busy doing in October. I was filming, I wouldn't say guiding, but filming and just trying to capture the emotion, the moment, and awesome animals on video.
it's not guiding, but you're also, yeah, you're such a wealth of knowledge and a good hunter that you're definitely not guiding those guys, but it's like you're on the hunt as well. Like you're also thinking and theorizing, you're glassing, you're pointing out animals, and then some guys more than others. Of course, guys got a really good skill set. There's not much guiding there. But then other guys that have less experience, you are in charge and you're trying to film.
Yeah, which is it's a lot to do, and that's one thing about it's fun to hunt with Guy because he's pretty relaxed and easygoing and kind of on the sunset cruise and lets me take charge and if I have some wild idea to go check a drainage, then I'll bomb up like on his moose hunt and I'll ride my bicycle up and check a drainage and he'll go somewhere else and from the calling and he just trusts me and trusts the process and the skill set and all the stuff that we practiced for so many years hunting and it's just proven and so yeah it's just easy hunting, right? I mean, hunting with these guys, it's easy hunting and I've been doing it so long. I do have a guiding background back in the day. Right after I got out of college, I did do a lot of guiding and I really enjoy it, and we've kind of talked about it in the past, but I have just as much fun hunting for myself as I do hunting with others and filming others. And guys moose hunt, once in a lifetime opportunity. It's literally a once in a lifetime chance to shoot a bull moose. And some of my other buddies that are drawn some limited entry areas in the random draw, 2% chance they'll probably never draw it again, and you'll probably never catch it in the point pool either. So, and
Yeah.
the one guy that we talked about too, he's never killed a bull before, and he drew it, Doug Peterson, and he drew a tag and took him hunting. So there's pressure, but it's just another hunt, and you're doing the same stuff. And big bulls act just similar to small bulls during the rut. They're looking to breed and doing the same thing. It's not rocket science, but it's just a matter of spending the time out there and knowing where to look, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, not only I was talking about Guy Eastman's bull elk you guys got on the migration the other day, but yeah, also the bull moose. Dude, what a bull moose. Just, I mean, you talk about once in a lifetime. That thing was giant.
Yeah, unbelievable. Just a classic moose hunt, though. I mean, I think we were 13 days into it, and you've have firsthand experience with this with your moose tag last year. But man, once you start getting 10, 12 days into it, you start second guessing. You're like, what am I doing wrong? And maybe there are no big bulls here. Maybe there are no mature bulls here. So I would say moose hunting, I bet you'll agree, moose hunting is way more of a mental game than it is anything else. If you're trophy hunting, if you're looking for, a quality representation of the species.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, well, it sounds like you guys got the full experience. Yeah, I didn't hear the whole story yet, so that's my first time hearing. So, yeah, that's exactly right. That moose hunting is trying, man. That is a mental game. And you're right. You start to almost second guess your moves once you start to get into it that many days and you haven't turned up a shooter bull. But so much of this game is just like adapting to the conditions that you're giving and being able to adapt on the fly on these hunts. Like I've been bow hunting like a madman, in between construction and everything else trying to get done. So I've had a couple successful muleys. In fact, I got to shoot you a photo. The last one I just killed 2 days ago. So
Nice.
on an adventure hunt. But dude, it's such an like adapting and evolving to the conditions that we're given. Like on that hunt, it was a state I had never been, a place I had never been. And so, you kind of have these thoughts of how it'll go, and you e-scout and you're like, oh, I'm going to glass from here and the bucks are going to be here. And, the lights come on opening morning and I'm in the totally wrong spot. I can't find a mule deer. They're not up high where I thought they were. Like, I had to adapt. And really when learning these new spots, it's like the animals are going to dictate like where you hunt. Like you have to solve the pieces of the puzzle, or like solve this game of like where those game animals are, because we talked about it before, but they're not spread out throughout country. And so I started going to my spots I had e-scouted and they were just trash. There's like no deer there. And then, you start cruising around and really using that vehicle as a tool to look over a lot of country. And then once I can find the tracks, the sign, the deer, I can start to find that terrain that holds deer, and I can start bombing into country and looking at drainages that are less accessible. But you got to be able to find those places. And so, I ended up looking at a lot of places where they weren't and crossing those off the list, and ultimately started to dial in like these mountain ranges, and they weren't on the mountain ranges and they weren't down low in the flats, but they're in this mid foothill country with all this undulation and coulees and canyons. And once I started to dial into that, like, I went from seeing 0 bucks and couldn't find a mule deer to all of a sudden seeing shooter bucks and making plays. But it's just that adapting on each and every hunt, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly what you're describing, which we talk about this in the mule deer course quite a bit as well, is that resourcefulness. And you have to have a resourceful mind and an adaptive mind if you want to be a consistently successful bow hunter or rifle hunter. The better that the better that you are at knowing when to quit looking one place and moving to another, and understanding deer movement or elk movement, or maybe not even movement. Maybe you're going into a brand new area like you're talking, you have no idea what type of movement you're going to experience. I mean, if you're first time hunting it, but if you understand deer behavior and you put all these things together and then be resourceful and use different methods of transportation to cover country and check new areas and be efficient with the use of your time, you kind of put it all together, kind of like what you're describing. And that's the hunt right there. That's the challenge. And that's probably the hardest thing to put together. And then of course, the second hardest is getting a nice, perfect arrow through an animal. But man, that's what's so difficult, is that resourcefulness that you're talking about. And that comes with experience, bottom line. I mean, we can talk about it a lot and prep guys for it, and like we do in the mule deer course, but ultimately you have to get out there and you have to struggle and you have to hit your head up against the wall and eventually get to plan C, D, E, F, and G, and exhaust all options. And sometimes you come home empty, and that's the beauty of bow hunting. I guess you could say the beauty of it. But you just never know. Every hunt's different, and it's difficult out there. And that's why, I could talk about this all the time, but that's why, it's so important too, to hunt areas year after year if you can, because you build that repertoire, you build that knowledge base for an area, and soon you'll find yourself becoming more and more successful. But taking it to the next level, new areas, new mountain range, new movement, new times a year, that's a huge effect. All the things that you have to put together it's seriously challenging.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, timing and I use it like a combination when I'm hunting these new units, and every place is different. Like there's some wilderness spots where I just have to bomb into and then see if there's animals in there. But you mentioned it like with guys hunt, like you'll bomb into a drainage and see if there's something in there. Sometimes it's just the little things that make a difference. And I use a combination of like using my vehicle as a tool, not road hunting, but I will glass for my rig, start to find tracks, start to find sign. And it's really like glassing. It's almost more of like a way of hunting or a style of hunting rather than just looking through your binos or sticking them out the window. And you can be like, I found this one good lookout, and it was this great lookout. And from this lookout, I could see the world. And it was like, but I got there midday and I looked around. I'm like, man, if I can't find a mule deer in here, like, I don't know where I'm gonna go. Like this just looks like the perfect country. And I glassed for 2 hours. So a really good session. I just glassing and glassing and glassing. And I think I caught 3 does or something, but not much. But then I sat there till the evening, and then the place just started to crawl with deer. They just start coming out everywhere. And all of a sudden I saw 20 different deer, and I saw multiple different bucks, and then that'll clue me into more country. So it's like glassing at the right times. It's finding these right vantage points. And like you talk, bombing into these drainages, Like sometimes I would take a little 200-yard hike off the road up over this ridge to look at something that nobody could see off the road, and all of a sudden there'd be deer bedded there. There'd be a buck over there. Like sometimes just this little bit of effort, goes a long ways. And it is like, it's never easy. You just got to keep your head in the game and keep theorizing. And it's like, it's never going to be easy where you just show up and the critters are there and you arrow one, or very rarely is it like that. I mean, sometimes if you're hunting, like you talked about, like hunting existing spots, you have that previous knowledge and you know that it's a good drainage and you're probably going to turn up something in there. You definitely have a better chance. But man, most of the time it's just getting there and adapting. And like what I thought on this last hunt where I was going to find deer is definitely not where I found him. And I had to totally adapt my tactics and then key into these foothills and then to my glassing techniques. And then all of a sudden there they are. But the previous hunt, like 2 weeks earlier, I had a hunt in country that I really knew well, that I backpacked into a bunch. And that country was different. It was October, so pre-rut. And I just knew, all the spots to look in, how to hike in there. And sure enough, turn up a good shooter buck. And he was solo and just in the perfect place to come around him over the top, a good win, and then able to put a perfect arrow into him and finish him. So really like stark difference in the hunting styles, just because I knew one area and didn't know another. But man, it's so crucial to just theorize and use your brain, is like figure it out. And you are right that experience really helps, but just keeping your head in the game and constant effort goes a long ways.
Definitely. And it's good too. I mean, we do this a lot, but like with the moose hunting, it's a real test because you're looking for a needle in a haystack out there. With those moose, there's not a ton of them. I don't care where you're at. It depends on the time of the year too, but during the rut, there's not a ton of them. It's mostly timbered country. And so you can spend a lot of time glassing and not finding anything. And so, hunts like that, they really make you a better hunter because it really challenges you mentally and your resourcefulness. And then, you go and hunt some of these other species where you have a little bit more in the pool to chase, of your target animal, whether it's deer or elk hunting. And you're like, man, all of a sudden that's a little bit easier. These deer and elk, it's a little easier hunting. I just got done moose hunting for 10 days and dadgum, that's a challenge. And, Guy and I, we talked about that too. Just because you draw a limited area or a highly desirable area doesn't mean it's going to be an easy hunt or there's going to be big bulls. And when we talk about, our application strategy and whatnot, we rarely suggest that a guy, holds out for the hardest to draw tag in the state, because most of the time, unless it's, the Henrys or maybe the Ponsagon for mule deer, and the Henrys have even declined, but most of the time, the areas are not worth the points that it requires to draw these tags. And so, yeah, Guy had a great area, but we still had to bust our tail and really, cover country and spend the time and believe in the process to pull out a quality animal. I mean, we found a big bull, but we found the only big bull out there that we knew existed. I mean, we covered a ton of country. We saw 11 bulls. It was the 12th bull we saw. Yeah, some days you see one or two, some days you see none, but all little bulls. And so, man, you start really wondering if there's a mature bull out there, and then you start wondering if you should settle for something less, and you're factoring in, how many days left you have in the hunt, on and on and on. It's definitely a mental game.
Man, I feel your pain. I had that same experience last year, like 30 days, starting to question my sanity. And it was
Wow.
the first shooter bull I saw. And yeah, I did a combination of like master vantage points, a combination of still hunting, and then a combination of driving roads too. It's like that's covering country and trying to do it all at the right times, because middle of the day, they're not moving much, And so you're right. That is a real test, is like having a moose tag like that. And you're also right, is like drawing a good tag does not guarantee a good critter. Like you've got to really work on your hunting skill set to have the skills to be able to turn up a good critter. But drawing a good tag is just the opportunity to go hunt them. That does it by no means guarantees success or that you'll even find a big one in there. But I do notice, like, I love to bow hunt so much, But I do notice, there are units that will produce bigger animals. And, I hunted a really good unit in the early season where I turned up some really good bucks. And it's been a few years since I've chased a buck that, and not to throw numbered, but, that breaks that magical 200-inch mark. Or, maybe last year I chased a 190-incher. But gosh, I got in a good unit this year, and there was just more of that bigger buck, where in a lot of the units I hunt, some of the Nevada units and places are easy to draw units that I hunt. I'm hunting a lot of 160 bucks in through there, or maybe even less or a touch more or something like that. But I do notice, there are quality units with better genetics and just bigger age class, or not even age class, but just bigger animals. And I do, in my application strategy, I want to do a mix and match between opportunity hunts and then also going for those giant critters as well. So yeah, I'm going to shuffle up my application strategy a bit too.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to in this day and age. You always want to get an opportunity hunt in there or so, but like you said, concentrating on some of these areas that have bigger animals. Like for instance, what comes to mind for me is I like to hunt areas that have low quotas. Even if you're hunting like some of these antelope areas, there might be a really large area, but there might be, a quota of 8,000 tags or 3,000, just a lot of tags. Idaho elk, 3,500 archery licenses, but it's a huge area. I don't like those units per se. As over the years of hunting them, you find that yeah, they might be an elk factory or an antelope factory, but that's about what they are. And the quality of animal that you find in there is a direct reflection of that sort of management, where they're giving out a lot of tags. There's a high amount of success, and quality is just down. But if you look at some of these smaller areas that have lower quotas, those are more of the areas that I like to focus on to find those better animals. And usually those are hard to draw hunts, of course. Uh, Small amount of tags, high demand. Yeah, it's going to be tough to draw. But always have a couple of those in my application strategy. And then, of course, some opportunity hunts. Still, once again, I still try to stay away from the high quota areas, but that's kind of my little tip, I guess, to reveal on that when you're talking about quality animals. Have you found the same thing, or what do you think on that, Brian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're onto something. I think that's definitely like a piece or a part to the strategy. But then there's, a lot of general units and places I hunt where I do turn up good quality animals as well. So I think, it can break, you can also break your own rules, as there are good
Yeah.
animals in general areas too. And I think it's like there's a bigger picture to look at. It's like, is there private land to refuge on? Do these deer have a winter range? Are they able to hunt them during the rut? Or do they have timber they can disappear down into in secondary living where they can grow up and grow old? So I just think there's so many factors into it. And I definitely think what you're mentioning is one of the major factors that goes into it. But I think you can look at multiple different elements when putting in these places. And there still are, I mean, I talk about these easy to draw or opportunity hunts, man. I'm still like a good 150, 160-inch, 5 or 6 year old mule deer still gets me excited, and I love to chase it. And it's like it's just it may be the exception in that unit, but I've definitely chased giant bucks in some of these units where it's not known for trophy quality as well. But yeah, I think it's just like adding up all that stuff to try to figure out what units we're gonna hunt, and doing a mix and match. And ultimately it's just like scouting and getting in these units, looking at the winter range and seeing what they'll produce. But uh, uh, I think you're onto something too. The lower quotas definitely are going to produce better quality animals.
Yeah, in general, and that you bring up a good point. I mean, and it's just the extensivity, is that a word? How extensive, the equation is for it to all come together, and just one variable, like tag quotas, or how they manage an area is just a small part of it. There's so many other things, and things that are out of your control too, with how the winter is and private access and how remote it is. Man, there's so many other things to factor in. But yeah, it's the equation that we've been working on here at Eastmans for quite a while, and testing our theories and applying for tags and these different types of hunts. And it has been a fun process, and it's so different. Every species is so different, our strategy and where we find quality animals and the theories that we apply to why there's big antelope this year but there wasn't last year. And like this year on Guy's moose hunt, all the moose were down low and it was a really wet year, whereas 2 years ago, when our buddy Sam Davis had the tag, he found all the bulls up high. It was a dry year. And so it's just funny how it can vary so much. And learning along the way, and you're applying this stuff. And it's another reason too why I like to keep like a hunt log where I'll write down all the conditions every year from where I'm hunting, and especially in those like general elk areas where I can hunt them every year and maybe see trends on what elk behavior and elk movement is doing based on the weather and the temps and the storms and whatnot. But yeah, it's just a fascinating experience, a fascinating journey to try to figure it out and crack the code to finding big animals every year. But we don't always kill the biggest and best, but that's hunting, and that's why it's such a fun game to take a part in.
Yeah, well, and I just love the game. It's such a blessing to be able to hunt as much as we do and to go into all these different places and habitats and try to figure them out. Like I truly feel like I'm alive when I'm doing it. I love playing the game and I love getting chances and stalking, and I love every part of it. And on this last hunt, boy, oh boy, did it take some toughness. It got bitterly cold. Like we had, got down to 2-3 degrees, and then just blowing like up to 40 miles an hour a couple days. And it just, when it gets so cold that wind and the snow just starts to sting your face, and then it takes it takes some toughness to be out there and to continue to grind to turn up those animals. But yeah, just every part of it from the early season to the late season. And I think it goes back to like what you're saying, how the moose were acting different this year. They were lower and some years they're higher. Like I found the elk acted different this year. There was so much feed that they were more spread out. And so, yeah, it's tough to count on the same spots year after year as the weather and the rainfall and the summer they had. Like all of those play such a huge part into it. And so I think it's good, like your hunting log, where you're really trying to theorize and think through it and where the animal should be and what they're doing. And then also that real time of adapt, evolve, and overcome, like really paying attention in real time what you're seeing and then trying to transpose that within that area or within that year. I think that's so important because it's like so many times, like we are getting to plan, I think I was on plan C or D and then started to turn up deer and started to really figure out the country that they like from where I was seeing them at. And it wasn't like I was seeing giant bucks, but all of a sudden starting to see doe numbers and they're hanging in this style of country. And so then where is there more of this style of country? Oh, over here. Okay, let's go cruise over there and go look at that at a prime time. And then all of a sudden, oh, there's some more deer. Oh, there's a couple bucks. Oh, there's a couple more bucks. Like, okay, we're on to something. Like, and then just trying to develop it further and then to have it come together is so cool. But yeah, that being able to adapt in real time to what you're seeing is so important.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's huge. It helps with the rut coming up. That's what I was going to ask you, is how the rut activity was. Are you starting to see some rut activity kicking up? I mean,
Yeah.
you were hunting a couple days ago, so end of October.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I am. Yeah. Yeah, the rut's been a touch early this year. I saw a really good buck like even 2 weeks ago that was like late October that was starting to rut. But yeah, the rut's starting to come on. But I did find that on this hunt, I was able to find success and find a good buck to arrow. But I also found out, information that I'll use for next year. And I know the muley rut like the back of my hand, but I just can't help myself as it starts coming into late October, early November, that those first signs of the rut. Like not every group of does has a buck with them, but every, it was probably every fourth or fifth group would have a buck with them. And then also the bucks, when I can find them by themselves, like starting a stage for the rut, they're pretty susceptible because they're really focused on the food source. They're staying in the same area. They're not moving such terrain. So as I look back at a lot of the bucks I've killed them just right in this pre-rut, this late October, early November. And same thing this year with 2 October bucks. And the one, he wasn't even close to rutting yet. It was 2 weeks ago or whatever, 3 weeks ago. But yeah, as I am starting to see some rut action, and as we're checking these spots, like there's so much to be learned from. So much of this too is crossing spots off the list. It's not always what I'm seeing. Sometimes it's what I'm not seeing. If I'm there at a prime time and I'm not seeing deer, it's like pretty soon I realize I'm looking in the wrong place, and I can cross that place and every place that looks like that off my list because they're just not hanging in that habitat. So crossing things off the list. But I did see a couple bucks starting to sniff around, starting to rut. I saw whitetail bucks with the does. They're starting to kind of hang around them, which is even a touch early, because I would say like my best dates, I really like the 5th to the 10th. But what I did learn on this hunt is, next year I will plan this hunt just a touch later. I will be in that 3rd to the 10th time frame because I love that time of year. I was a touch early on it, and even though I did good, I think it could be better.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're kicking in up here too, seeing some rut activity, bucks looking for does, and I'm getting ready to do some deer hunting too. And so yeah, I'm getting fired up after this last elk hunt with Guy. It's like, man, it's November. It's time to deer hunt now.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, you've been packing quite a few animals off the mountains. Yeah, you and Guy killed a good bull, and then yeah, I knew you had a deer hunt coming up, or if not, a couple of them, right?
Yeah, just one. I mean, we have this migration hunt in Wyoming here that I've been hunting with my brother for a day or two, and looking at bucks, lots of young bucks still. So I don't take it too seriously. I hate to go shoot a 3x3, a little 2-year-old 3x3 up there. So I just staying patient and just enjoying the migration, enjoying watching deer here in Wyoming. So yeah, that's the fun one that I've been doing for the last day and a half. That's what I was doing yesterday. But yeah, headed to do a rut hunt here for whitetails, maybe mule deer. We'll see what I run into out there. Probably the same type of hunt that you had, I'm guessing. But I think either one, whiteys or muleys, it's go time. I think I'm going to head out there about the 7th, I believe, and hunt for a week or 10 days or whatever it takes, and yeah, see what I can come across. So I'm stoked.
Yeah, man, that's killer. Yeah, I did see some pretty decent whitetails. Are you running up against the rifle season, or will be hunting during the rifle season, or do you know yet?
Yeah, just before it, I want to make sure I'm doing all my hunting before rifle. So
Yep.
yeah, that's the big thing. I learned my lesson before, planning my hunt and out there, and head out there and like, oh man, rifle season opens in 5 days, and it changes the game. I mean, for where I was hunting, it basically ended the good hunting. I mean, the deer
Totally.
were shot up, and it's over. So yeah, definitely. These bow seasons, they go a long time, but you still have to pay attention to when the rifle season comes in, or the doe hunts come in, or whatever else, because it
Elk
just,
hunts.
yeah, elk hunts,
Yeah.
that's another factor. So it just kind of screws up activity. So
You do
um,
youth hunts. You have to look at all those seasons because if you get it wrong, you may show up. And like you say, it's like rifle hunts they present a different set of challenges, right? You get a lot of guys out, they're really efficient with rifles. They go really hard, and so yeah, I find that same thing that during those general rifle seasons, or any rifle season for that matter, if you're trying to bow hunt during them, man, you're up against it. And
yeah.
I've got some backcountry spots that I'll go hunt during general rifle that I'll backpack into, but I'm really finding my own experience back there where I'm getting back to where these deer get pressured too, and I'm willing to sleep in the dirt and the cold, and just to find my own like oasis to hunt. But man, it's tough when those rifle seasons come in. It's going to totally change the game. So same thing for me, as I was trying to time my hunts before rifle seasons come in, because where I was hunting, like you can bow hunt during the rifle season, and really the rifle season dates are really good for the rut. but I just knew that I'll be better off to go prior than, because I'll find more animals that are on the public that aren't chased off yet.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. That's been my experience too. But that's the cool thing. We can hunt a whitetail or a mule deer, and it's kind of whatever's, a good animal I run across and how he responds, whether, I try to rattle him in or just spot and stalk him. It's fun to just be an opportunist out there and maybe not be so selective, and have more of just the experience of deer hunting. And you don't get it too often, and especially it seems like nowadays too, elk hunting. I get so selective, and you're looking for the right situation and the right bull and yada yada yada, and so it's fun just to go out and hunt and be an opportunist, and find a respectable animal and go all in and make a play on them. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the funnest part about bow hunting is making plays, and you want to find animals that you're happy with. You don't want to be disappointed, but there are some hunts that you do want to be more selective. Like we've both killed enough animals where it's like, hey, I got a real opportunity here to kill a good one. I'm going to hold out. And then there's other ones where it's like, okay, if I find a deer that's 4 years old, 5 years old, maybe even a good 3 year old, like, I'm gonna make a play and see if I can make something happen. Like they're tough to get narrow in. Yeah, I'm interested, like hunting those. Man, those whitetails, like I know a lot of them are killed with a bow, but a lot of them are killed from tree stands and from blinds and things of that nature. Out in that country that you're headed to, it's got to be pretty challenging. Like I found one spot that was kind of a hotbed of whitetails, and there were some whitetail bucks around. But it does, like those things are pretty switched on in that country. So your tactics, you were just kind of discussing it. So you may rattle for them or something of that nature, and then you're also stalking them. And have you hunted this place before, Dan?
I've floated around a little bit. I'm gonna be hunting some new stuff too.
Cool.
But yeah, just I love rattling in whitetails. It's probably one of my most favorite hunting to do with a bow during the whitetail rut. Just how well they respond to rattling and calls and decoys, and it's exciting. And I'm more of the type of guy that's probably not gonna hunt from a tree stand. I mean, if I have to in certain places, and it's the thing to do, then I'll do it. But if I can do it on my own terms, that's kind of spot and stalking and hunting those river bottoms and plenty of cover. And like you say, I mean, some of these areas, it's just not conducive to the style that I like with, bow hunting and decoys and hunting these whiteys. And so I just have to change up my tactics for wherever I end up or wherever I end up finding the deer. But I truly do love bow hunting whitetails from the ground with a decoy. It's so exciting. They get so crazy, just like I rutted up bull elk. And you stab that decoy into the ground out there and sit off to the side and clank on the horns a few times. And these bucks come in all puffed up and they're staring at the decoy and they're just oblivious to their surroundings. And so it's just fun to witness. You'll get small bucks, medium bucks, some big bucks. Sometimes they come in slow. Sometimes they just come charging in on a dead run and you have time to do nothing. That's exciting too. And it makes great episodes for Beyond the Grid, that excitement, that adventure, that unpredictableness. And so hopefully, our viewers appreciate that. And I always try to film interesting things and not too boring of hunts like sitting in tree stands or ground blinds.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and sometimes that is the method when you're hunting thicker country and you can't still hunt through it. And the numbers aren't as condensed. Like there is a time and a place for it, but I'm with you. I love hunting them on the ground. Well, you've done really well doing it. Especially like I've seen you turn up quite a few of these bucks in Wyoming and different places and been able to arrow them year after year. So yeah, your tactics definitely work for hunting these things. So you're going to have all the tricks in your bag. So you may stalk them on the ground. You may rattle them in. It sounds like you use that decoy quite a bit as you're rattling too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's kind of, the factor that really takes their attention off of where the rattling or where the grunting comes from, that sound. But when they have a visual and it's off to the side a little bit, it's a game changer. And it'd be the same thing with elk hunting, with calling. If you could set up with a decoy, and I know a lot of guys that use a decoy, but usually that means, a decoy from where you're calling or something. But I like to, with the deer hunting, you're setting the decoy up away from you and you're kind of hidden off to the side and in the shadows. to really just set up a great ambush on these bucks as they come in. But yeah, over the years, yeah, of working at it and perfecting it, you're not going to perfect it, but just my experience with it, it's so fun. And you catch them on the right day. These whitetail bucks are just crazy, and they'll come running in, and it's quite the show. So yeah, I've really come to grow on me to hunt whitetails that way. And it's like, man, I sit there and I'll be like, yeah, it's a good looking mule deer buck. And, I look at that, and then I'll look at a whitetail buck that might not be quite as good, but he's all rutted up and puffed up. I might go after the whitey. They'll probably make you cringe me saying that. I know you're a mule deer guy through and through, but yeah, it's one of those things. Those whitetails get crazy.
Mm. Yeah, I'm the exact opposite. I just can't seem to hunt whitetails on a tag where I can hunt muleys. Like, I love the spot and stalk game on muleys, and the same way that whitetail can be so action packed. Like, I love the muleys when they're rutting those does, and I feel like it's kind of elk hunting because I'm so aggressive that I've got to make moves and I'm ducking. Like, the buck I killed is so killer, Dan. It was like spotted him, and he was with another buck. The other buck actually had double stickers coming out either side, and he was a shooter. He was just like maybe 3 or 4. Like, he was just a little bit younger, and the other buck was heavier and older, just had this horse of a body. He was definitely the buck to shoot, but it's tough when you have a double sticker buck. Like, that also like weighs on you as well. And so I kind of said I'd shoot either buck, but man, I mean, just the play was so cool. Like, it went through these coulees and these canyons, and they kind of disappeared, and I'd have to come over the top of the ridge line, and I saw them both, and they're feeding their way, and they disappear behind this kind of like a mound or a big mound. They disappear behind the backside, so I know they're in there, and so I shoot for the saddle, and then come over the top of the saddle, and I catch both bucks, and I freeze, and they walk by at about 100 yards, and then they kind of feed their way up, and I think they're going to come up and by me to my left, so I make this move around and then up around the ridge to cut them off, and then come over the top and catch them again, and now they're just feeding in a little bottom right there, and they're not coming up and at me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, man, maybe I can circle around that big mound, and I can come up that bottom, and then this dividing ridge line in this coulee will block my approach, and I can come right up the bottom and right up on them, and so make my move around, and then I'm trying to get on them that way, and just poking up and just starting to get to where I'm going to come over the top, and I catch them, and they're moving by me, and they come by me at 60 yards or whatever, and crouch down before they're looking in my direction. One mistake guys make too is to like crouch down right as animals look at them. Like, animals, they catch movement, but I do like to be crouched down if an animal's going to look at me. And so I caught them just coming up, but they weren't looking my direction and able to get down. And it's snow covered ground, and even though I've got a good camo pattern, like, I'm not wearing whites, and so even my camo sticks out pretty good in this white color, but when you don't move, they just don't see, and they walk by, and they never stop for a shot, and they go over the next ridge, and so then I'm racing to the next ridge to cut them off, and just as I'm about to get to that ridge, they come up like over the top where they can see me, and now I'm having to duck low, and I'm hurrying and rushing as their heads aren't looking at me, and I get around the next ridge, and they're cutting up, and so just playing this game through these coulees and canyons is seeing them first, and they don't have any idea that I'm hunting them, which is so cool, and then finally gives me a good shot and able to execute and put a good shot on them. But man, it's like I cannot get enough of that, playing that game with those muleys. Like, during the rut with does, they get crazy chasing them around, but it's just this constant, like, get to where they're at and then adapt to the situation which you're given, kind of like when I'm stalking on elk. So yeah, man, I just can't get enough of it. And in a lot of the states I hunt, I can hunt a whitetail or a mule deer, and it seems like I just can't help myself. I'm always after muleys.
Have you ever killed a whitetail on either species tag?
No. So I was actually going to tell you, like, this is, I'm not ashamed of it or embarrassed, but this is like, I love hunting so many different species in different habitats. And while I have probably 25 whitetail does to my credit with my bow, all on the ground, all spot and stock, I do not have a whitetail buck to my credit with my
No
bow and arrow.
way.
Yep, I've never killed a buck with my bow. And so there'll be some years where I go, okay, this is a year I'm going to kill a whitetail buck on my either mule deer or whitetail, and I'll put some focus into him and I'll chase him. And the deal is like, it almost has to be one that gets me excited. And I don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be 160-inch whitetail to get me excited. I mean, even 120, 130-inch whitetail, I just want mass and maturity. Like the spindly little 3 points don't quite do it for me, like the young 3-year-old bucks. And so I've had some chances of those bucks where I've just let them walk. And even like just a heavy 3-point that's 130 inches, I would be so stoked to kill, but I just can't quite. And I've had some chances. I've probably even missed a time or two on those things, you know? And so I've definitely chased him around, but yeah, I'm yet to kill one where I can kill either a muley or a whitetail. It seems like I'll hunt them for a little bit, and then I'm like, oh man, I do have a good muley rut spot. I should probably get in there and go check them out. So one of these years, I definitely need to put down a whitetail buck with my bow because I haven't done that yet.
I'm gonna figure out how to log into your account sometime and apply for a whitetail only hunt or something on your name.
Fair enough.
No,
Yeah.
that'd be fun to do. Go hunt whiteys with you sometime. It's fun. I mean, the spot and stock mule deer hunting, like you were describing your hunt, like it sounded like epic terrain to really move through. And isn't it amazing when you're spotting and stalking, like when the terrain's perfect, it's almost easier than it should be to get it done and get on them, and you just really appreciate those stocks and those times that that buck or bull is in that just phenomenal stalking terrain, because it makes it so easy. But 80% of the time they're not in good spots to stalk, and that's why what makes it so difficult. But it sounds so epic how you're describing it, with the terrain and moving through, and you have lots of ridges and coulees and draws and knobs, and you're just being patient. You're waiting for that moment to strike. That is hard to beat. I will give it to you there.
Yeah, it's super fun, man. Such fun bow hunting. But you are right, in the country that they're in plays a big role in whether you're successful or not. And we've talked about it with antelope too, is knowing when to stalk them and when not. And I just had Dylan Ness like on the Eastmans Elevated, and he was talking about this place where he's hunting where he just like couldn't quite get it done on these bulls, and then moved to this different terrain, and sure enough ends up killing a great bull in the country that he hunts with the right topography and ungulation. And I found that too, that a lot of times you got to find them in that terrain that's bow hunter friendly. Like being able to recognize which country is bow hunter friendly, I think makes a big difference in killing these things. And like you say, you got to hunt them where they're at or where you find them. I mean, you don't get to pick and choose which coulees or draws they're in, but it sure does make a difference when you're hunting bow hunter friendly country. And bow hunter friendly country is like you described, like a lot of ungulation, a lot of topography, coulees you can shoot across, ridge lines you can hide behind. Like you can just make moves in that country where you're not just stuck in the open 300 yards away from the deer you want to kill.
No, exactly. That's exactly it. It like antelope hunting, I'll pass up bucks. I might drive by, and that might be a great buck, but if I'm looking around and I'm studying the terrain, and if I just determine it's a low odds stock or a low odds opportunity, I probably won't even try it, because I'm probably wasting my time. Now, if I have, a super monster animal, like an exceptional, specimen, I may spend 5 days trying to get him killed. It's just different hunts are gonna probably require different tactics. But like antelope hunt, when I'm cruising, I just want a respectable animal. If they're not in a good spot, I probably won't even waste my time, because of what you're describing, because it can eat up days. If you're hunting an animal and you're hunting that less than ideal terrain, it can eat up days. And I've been there too, where I just can't get it done, and the animals may be there, but they're just, you know, they're zigging, I'm zagging, and the terrain is just not quite there, and I don't have the wind. And as soon as you just pick up, regroup, move somewhere else, find animals, and before you know it, you're tagged out and headed home. And that's the beauty of bow hunting. But knowing when to move is huge, and knowing when to leave animals to find others. It's a challenge. It's, once again, it all comes down to what's going on up here. It's that mental game.
So true. Yeah, it's yeah, I'd almost hunt lower densities and a higher percentage chance with killing them. Like I have a spot where I hunt antelope, which is so much undulation and topography that even though I won't see as many antelope in there, I got a better chance at killing them when I do find them. And so, yeah, I think being able to recognize what's bow hunter friendly country, like, man, this country is, really huntable. Like, maybe spending a touch more time in there. But you're right, it's such a you have 100 decisions to make when you're on these hunts. When to pick up, when to move areas, when to really hit an area hard and hunt it harder, and knowing that there's animals in there. There's like all these decisions that go into it to be successful or not, or to make it come together. And we don't pick all of them right. Like you have to have ideas, and you also have to just make a decision and go with it. But then, in the back of your head, you're thinking, oh boy, I would just left a bunch of deer. And, we have all these sayings we use, don't leave deer to find deer, but sometimes you have to. And, sometimes you get them chased around and spooked around where you got to make the call of like, all right, I've got this place blown up. I've got to go find a different area. Like it has been good, but I think I've played it out and spooked the animals that are in here. It's time to pick up and go somewhere else. But that decision making, throughout a hunt, it is as important as anything to find success.
Yep, absolutely. And it doesn't matter what species. It all boils down to keeping your head in the game and being smart and knowing when to throw in the towel in one spot and find another one. You could apply it to anything you're hunting all over the world. I've found that.
Oh man, it's so true, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, our biggest advantage is human beings is our ability to outthink, outwit our prey, our ability to theorize and to make assumptions on what we're seeing. And then our other real advantage out there is our endurance. It's like our ability, not only endurance for how far we can go or the distance we can travel, but just the day after day endurance is such a huge part of it too. The mental grind, like on your moose hunt, and so those two things, if we can remember that. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I can, been hunting long enough where I can theorize and come up with what the animals are doing or where they will be. And I'm not right all the time. Sometimes you have the best theory in the world. Like my hunt plan for this hunt, man, my e-scouting, you should have seen it, Dad. It was perfect. I had vantage points and I'm going to see him here and see him there. And I get up there and it's just crickets. There is nothing around. It's not the right terrain. It's not the right habitat. And I had to dial in. And even though these deer, have a lot of the same habits and tendencies as other mule deer I've hunted, and this is like a prairie style mule deer, they definitely had specific preferences in that country of the terrain that they liked and the terrain they didn't like. In never hunting there, never being there, I had to dial into that, and I was completely wrong off the start.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, I laugh about that. We talk about e-scouting and you see others talking about how important it is, but it's like, is it though? Is e-scouting really that important because of these scenarios? Because it seems like every hunt, every new area, yeah, you look at aerial topography and the land ownership and access, and yeah, you need the e-scout, but you start building like this picture how it's going to go in your mind, and then you get there and it looks completely different. There's no animals, like you said, and you're like starting from scratch, and it's just how hunts evolve. But it's just funny how that works and how our minds work and how we anticipate, and how deceptive aerial imagery can be. 100%.
It's like you use it to find likely spots, right? And then once you find those likely spots, you have to dive in. But yeah, the places that I thought were going to be best were crickets in there. And then, but there is something with making sure you're giving it your all and really checking those areas. It's like just driving through one at 10 o'clock in the morning isn't going to tell you whether there's critters there or not. So you really have to give it your all. So I found my spot. I found myself in this position of like, first couple spots didn't pan out, and now I'm on to my third spot, but I'm still around in the same general area. Like I'm not far from where I had started. And, you almost get these thoughts like, oh, should I pick up and move to a different part of the state? Or, it's like a big area that I can hunt. And it's like, oh man, should I totally pick up and drive an hour or two this way? And you're like, no, just calm down. Like if this doesn't pan out, like, yeah, you may have to travel an hour or two to a different location, but just make sure that you're hunting each one of these spots and you're spending the time to look at it at prime time, and make sure that you're not jumping the gun, or you can't just drive a road that everybody else is driving and think you're covering it either. Like you got to get out and make some hikes through country and get to some more of the remote terrain, and you got to get to some of the good vantage points and give it an hour at prime time and really see what's there. And it was that started turning up deer for me. And then once I could find deer, then I could transpose and find spots around me like, oh, okay, they're in this foothill country. Now I can really key into this foothill like I started to find the country they liked, and then I could just find that country everywhere. Then the e-scouting started really making sense, but it was real-time e-scouting, and now looking at my map from where I've seen deer, and it's like, oh man, okay, this spot has a bunch of public in this foothill country. Oh, this is where I need to focus at. And that's really what like dialed me in and helped me find success.
The takeaway there that I really focused on from what you're saying was, just because you're driving through an area, and this could be totally weather dependent. And I saw this last week when we were hunting elk, that just because it's storming, it's cold, you would think that they need to, these elk and deer need to be on their feet all day to feed. They're not. They're still moving in the mornings. They're still moving in the last hour of light. They're bedding in the thick cover during the day. They're not visible. It's not easy. So you have this nasty weather, but still they're acting like normal deer and elk in October or September, any other time of the year. And so you still have to be diligent and cover these areas with your glass during the prime time. The first 2 hours in the morning and the first 2 hours in the evening. When it's colder late season, you might get 2 hours on the mornings and evenings, whereas maybe in August or September you might get an hour, depending on the weather. So the weather can help you out as well. But you have these full moon nights and a migration trail, and these animals are probably up on their feet all night long during their migration, feeding, and they can see really well. It's high pressure, there's no weather. And so, yeah, you don't see movement during the day. And that can kind of play tricks on your mind a little bit too, because there's animals, but you're not seeing them. What am I doing wrong? But once again, you're reverting back to that morning and evening, and knowing the process and believing in it. And that's ultimately how we found Guy's bull that he harvested. So just because the weather's bad doesn't mean that they're going to be on their feet any longer. That's something that we really saw this last week.
Yeah, same. And sometimes it can be funny too, where animals are bedded right away in the morning from the storm, and then they get up mid-morning and move. Or like I killed a buck with my daughter like a week ago or so. We went and did an adventure hunt, which was super cool. We teamed up for a few days. We had the youth season, and then she actually ended up getting it done during the general rifle season. But the buck we found, we left and it was a hot sunny day. Like she actually got good weather where she didn't have to freeze her butt off. So it was actually fairly warm, but we took off for an afternoon evening hunt. And it was like one of the first places we hiked a couple miles back into this drainage. First place I checked, there was a buck on his feet and feeding like early in the afternoon. And then he bedded down and he stayed bedded until last light. And so like here we find this buck at 3:00, 3:30, and he's just like, he had inches of fat on him, Dan. He's such a fat, big buck. And he was just feeding in this window of time, like from 3 to 4, 2:30 to 4, feeding his brains out. And then he bedded down. And if you didn't know he was there, you'd never find him. He just bedded in there, and we snuck into range, and then she had to wait for him to stand for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And finally the sun was going down where it was getting late, where I wasn't sure if she was even going to get the shot, where I had to get this buck up. And so I started breaking sticks. I started mooing like a cow. I was just trying to get this buck up. And finally, and I've got her on the sticks on a sit down rest, 160 yards away, like perfectly positioned to shoot this buck. And I could not get this buck to stand, and finally my mues must have convinced him to stand up, and he did stand, and she made a perfect shot. But I think too, like my point to this is like you're right. Mornings and evenings are your time to focus, and you have to be at the right spots at the right times. But you also have to believe in the vantage point. I like see so many people that get to a good glassing point. They throw up their glass, they pan through it all. There's no deer out. They keep moving. They keep moving up the ridge line. They move to a different spot. They go, oh, nothing's here. And sometimes it's sitting on those vantage points for a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, even longer, and all of a sudden you'll catch a buck mid-morning that's moving and you're like, oh, there's one. So it's not just like glassing from a good glassing point. It's like believing in that vantage point, like this is a good spot, I better sit here for a while. And sometimes it takes a while to turn up those bucks. In fact, I sat on a vantage point and saw some groups of deer, and I saw a couple smaller bucks, and I'm like, there's got to be a good buck around here. We're coming into the rut. There's got to be a good buck around here. And I sat there and it was in the evening, and I just couldn't turn one up. And eventually, the last deer I saw after an hour and a half or 2 hours of glassing, I finally spotted a buck like on this hillside by himself. And I'd been glassing there the whole time, like, throughout this terrain. I had just missed him or hadn't picked him up or whatever the case is. But sometimes it takes spending some time from these vantage points. You don't see everything with your first pan of the binos.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing too is what really rings home for me is that, stay out there all day. Don't just throw in the towel after 2 hours in the morning. You don't see anything and then go back to camp and take a nap. Stay out there all day. If you don't have anything else to do, you're not going to kill one from the trailer or from the truck or whatever, taking a nap. But if you're out there and you're watching, through 10 o'clock, noon, 2 o'clock, because there's always an exception. There's always a buck that has that food source or has that attitude that he's doing something a little different. And you see it all the time with these high country mule deer too. You may not see them at first light. There's nothing. And then an hour into daylight, they stand up and they appear out of nowhere. I mean, and they're not visible, whatever they're laying in. But once they get on their feet again, then holy smokes, there's a buck right in front of me. So there's always that exception. Every year, every hunt, I would say there's an exception. You find an animal where you least expect it, or they're on their feet when you least expect it. And that's one thing, November hunting for deer during the rut. I mean, you're out there all day. You better be, because these bucks are cruising all day. They have the potential to cruise all day, and you just never know when they're going to be on their feet looking for does. I mean, it could be any hour of the day. And I've killed whitetail bucks at literally every hour of the day: morning, mid-morning, noon, middle of the afternoon, and then right before dark. And so, yeah, once again, hunt all day, really make the most of your time, especially when you have maybe 5 days to hunt. I always hunt my tail off for all day, every day, because then I know, even if I go home unsuccessful, I know that I put my 110% behind it. And the reason I was unsuccessful wasn't from a lack of effort. And that's a good feeling to go home with. You might not punch your tag, but at least that you gave it all the effort that you humanly possibly could.
Yeah, 100%, man. You are spot on. Yep. We just only have so many days, and we got to give it full effort. And even though they might, really be moving in that morning and night, you can count on it. There's always the exception. Or I love spotting bedded deer. And you're also right. Like, you think you can see everything, and it lays out so wide open, and you're like, I can see everything. There's no deer here. They can just appear out of thin air, like deer, elk. Like I found on my goat hunt this year, I'd be looking at a hillside. It didn't look like there was a coulee, a crack. They didn't look like anything could hide in there. And all of a sudden there'd be a white goat standing out there after I've glassed it for 2 hours. Like, they just show up out of nowhere. These animals are so good at hiding in these canyons, coulees, rises. And even from the best vantage point, we can still only see 50%, or, like, we can't see all of it, maybe more than 50%, but you can't see the back sides of these ridges or down where they bed. They can always hide from you. And yeah, you think you've seen everything, and then you pan it one more time and there's a buck standing there or something, So yeah, it's so true, man. And that all day effort, it does pay off. You like to spot one bedded. It's like a feather in my cap when I can spot like a bedded buck. I look for that. So that's why I do hunt all day, as I know that if I turn one up in his bed, I probably got a good chance to kill him.
Yep. It's huge. Yeah. Especially looking for those afternoon bedded bucks, that's another reason to get out and cruise and run these vantage points, and don't skyline yourself. But whether they're bedded or on their feet, and in this open country like this, you can totally catch them bedded, and usually they're in those little sweet pockets where you can get right up on them. So
Mhm.
that's the beauty of that too, of hunting all day.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, man, you've had a heck of a season, like for yourself with your own bow in your hands, and then, also helping out so many of these buddies on their hunts. You spent a lot of time in the woods, and boy, a guy sure learns a lot. Like we continue to evolve and continue to learn and get better. I get more effective and better like each and every season, and I know you're the exact same, man. You've spent a bunch of time in the field and been in on a lot of success. So yeah, man, congrats. It's been a great season thus far, and you've got a deer tag left, and I'm sure you're gonna go give him heck out there.
Yeah, I'm chomping at the bit to get back out there and get that bow out again and shoot and get out and hunt for myself. It's been a long season. I think I've put in more days this year than any other season in the past. Just guys drawing tags and friends drawing tags, and how the schedule ended up lining out. Like, talk about busy, but I've loved every minute of it. I love this stuff. It doesn't get old, and like you said, you're wanting to really fine tune your craft every year, every hunt, getting better and better, and you're always learning. There's always new things that you're picking up on, and if you're not, then you're probably not trying hard enough. You need to, because every hunt, I don't care what skill level you're at, if you're not learning something, then you need to rethink it, because you're probably not becoming a better hunter, and part of that is failing too. But yeah, super excited to get back out there and hunt these rutted up bucks. I can't wait. It's I look forward to this time of year.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see some of your Beyond the Grids like episodes that you turn out from this season, man. Not only the ones where you're in front of the camera, but also the ones you're behind. Like you've been doing it for a long time, and you're really good at telling those stories. So can't wait to see like guys moose or guys bull that you guys just killed, or your buddy that killed that great bull that you were rifle hunting with, or also you killed another giant bull this year. So yeah, man, can't wait to see those come out. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me. Keep up on the podcast. Always good to catch up with you, Dan.
Heck yeah. Likewise, buddy. We'll talk to you here soon.
Yep, sounds good.